Welcome, I'm John McBride, and today I'm talking about Japan through poetry and pilgrimage in Matsuo Bashō's footsteps. In this talk, I will introduce key resources, 4 preparatory walks that Bashō undertook before the main event, his narrow road to the deep north, talk about how haiku developed, called hokku in Bashō's time, outline his journey, introduce the original book which Bashō held close in his kimono sleeve at the moment of his passing in Osaka, and then we'll have some fun visiting the highlights of the journey and rereading some of his prose and poetry from those locations. First, suggested resources. There are many translations of Bashō's book, including my own, but Penguin Classics has an excellent translation of all 5 of Bashō's travelogues, culminating in his masterpiece, The Narrow Road to the Deep North. This book is available on Kindle for about $15. The second resource is my own account of my 1982 walk in Bashō's footsteps. I've made the book available free of charge as a PDF at bit.ly/Matsuo Bashō. In that document, I also provide the first English translation of Kawai Sora's diary. Sora was Bashō's travelling companion, and his diary gives exact details of distances, places, weather, arrival and departure times, whom they met, meals, even bathing arrangements. Sora handled all the research for the journey, so he's close to my heart, the accommodation, the transport, and the finances. Together with Bashō's poetic prose and haiku, and Sora's precise record, these two give us real insight into what it was like to walk those lonely northern roads over 340 years ago. Sora was one of Bashō's top 10 disciples, 5 years his junior. Sora died 16 years after Bashō on a small island called Iki. He was working on a shogunate inspection mission. Iki lies off the northern coast of Kyushu, and the photo on the right is me paying my respects at Sora's grave, which is on Iki Island. Next, Bashō's 4 preparatory walks, and just to remind, the Penguin Classics book provides translations of these walks, as well as the Narrow Road to the Deep North. Bashō wrote the first of 5 travelogues in 1684. His second travel sketch about his journey to Kashima is interesting because he was accompanied on this journey by Sora. It was sort of a test walk for the two of them. His first and 4th journeys saw him returning to Edo on the Nakasendo Way, one of the most popular hiking trails in Japan today. Bashō's 4 preparatory travelogues prepared him for his final walk and the creation of his masterpiece, The Narrow Road to the Deep North, in 1689. I'll leave you to pause and enjoy 2 of Bashō's poems from A Visit to Sarashina Village, written on the Nakasendo, and well known to those who've hiked on the Nakasendo Trail through these very well-preserved post towns in the Kiso Valley. This image is taken in the post town of Tsumago. The translations are by Nobuyuki Yuasa, Emeritus Professor from Hiroshima University, and he wrote the introduction to the Penguin Classics book and provided the translations. Now, what is a haiku, and how did haiku derive from hokku? Bashō is known as the father of hokku. Hokku are the opening 17-syllable verse of a longer string of linked poems. The word haiku was popularized much later at the end of the 19th century, and at that time Bashō was recognized as the form's true father. Hokku and linked verse became popular in the 15th century. Japan had been ruled by warriors since the late 12th century from the small city of Kamakura, but in 1333 the military government returned to Kyoto, beginning the Muromachi period. The period's 8th shogun, called Yoshimasa, was a terrible administrator, and the country slid into over 100 years of civil war. However, Yoshimasa was an immensely important patron of the arts, and Japan, thanks to Yoshimasa, had its true Renaissance moment. Despite, or precisely because, the country was tearing itself apart, 3 great art forms flourished under Yoshimasa's patronage: tea ceremony, Noh theatre, and linked verse poetry. Noh theatre, with its otherworldly music, strange movement, and spectacular costumes, offered pure escapism from the mundane. Tea ceremony offered a quiet way of communing with one's fellow human being, even amongst the troubles of the mundane world. And linked verse was an even more powerful form of that same sense of communing with one's fellow human being. Multiple poets composed collaboratively, the senior poet opening with 3 lines of 17 syllables, the hokku, literally the starting stanza. One of the finest examples is by Sogi, Shohaku, and Socho from 1488. The linking works on several levels at once. Each new verse connects only to the one immediately before it, so every adjacent pair reads like a complete traditional Japanese poem of 5 lines, a waka poem. The middle verse keeps getting reinterpreted as the next one arrives. The result is link and shift, local coherence without any overall plot, drifting through seasons, love, travel, and lament, like a scroll unrolling. Sogi opens with haze on a snowy mountain at evening. And let's read his poem. Despite some snow, the base of the hill spread with haze, the twilight seen. Shohaku next links by letting the snow melt become water flowing toward a village, answering evening haze with the scent of plum blossom. And reading his poem, where the water flows afar, the village glows with sweet plum flowers. Socho next takes that same water and adds a breeze and willows along its banks. In the river wind, a single stand of willow trees shows spring colour. So each verse honours its predecessor while quietly moving the scene somewhere new. Bashō's haikai linking a century later, and ultimately the standalone haiku, grew directly out of this practice. Try it yourself. Ask your neighbour to respond to a short poem you have written. It is a very powerful communing experience. Bashō's most famous haiku is Furuike ya kawazu tobikomu mizu no oto. His hokku was so complete, so meaningful, that it was difficult to link to. The plop of a frog into an undisturbed garden pond is like a painting in words, perhaps a photograph in today's parlance. It expands the garden's universe and draws the outside world into focus. As the listener clears their mind in a moment of quiet meditation. An ancient pond, a frog jumps in, the sound of water. Its fame rests on what it overturned. In classical poetry, frogs appeared for one reason only, their song, traditionally paired with yamabuki, carrier roses, an elegant, fixed association polished over centuries. Bashō's frog doesn't sing, it jumps, something no poetic frog had done before. And what we get isn't voice, but a plain splash. So imagine yourself sitting, staring out at an old pond, lost in thought, meditating with the universe open before you. And then that little annoying frog brings you back to the moment, a realization that our existence in the universe is truly minute. And this becomes a common theme for Bashō's Zen-inspired poetry. And Bashō's frog poem became the emblem of haiku itself. Bashō's final journey was 2,400 kilometers long and took 5 months. The two travellers prayed at Toshogu Shrine in Nikko in early summer, then passed through the Shirakawa barrier station, finally entering that area known as the Deep North. Next came Bashō's long-awaited Matsushima Bay, and then on to Hiraizumi, an emotional visit for Bashō to the last stand of Minamoto no Yoshitsune, one of Japan's most beloved tragic heroes, timed precisely for the 500th anniversary of Yoshitsune's death. The pair detoured up to the spectacular Yamadera temple and then took a boat down the summer rain-swollen Mogami River. They climbed the Dewa mountains as pilgrims and stayed for 9 days. Their most northerly destination was Kisakata, just inside today's Akita prefecture, before turning south along the long, sun-baked coast of the Sea of Japan. They enjoyed the refinement of Kanazawa in the first cooling autumn breezes and completed their journey at Ogaki on 10 October 1689. Now, let's look at the original copy of Bashō's masterpiece, which was almost lost. So let me start where our story finishes in Tsuruga. Tsuruga sits near the Fukui-Shiga prefectural border. There today, still a significant merchant's home stands and has stood for 16 generations of the Nishimura family. Now, 3 original copies of Bashō's book survive, but the most important is the Nishimura version, still owned by this family today. The very book Bashō held tightly in his kimono sleeve when he died in Osaka. He was on a journey to Kyushu to place the manuscript in his disciples' care, Kyorai. So Bashō's top disciple was Kyorai, and Bashō indeed left the manuscript to him in his will. Bashō's brother ensured Kyorai received the manuscript safely, and when Kyorai died, the book passed to a number of his relatives, but eventually made its way to the 10th generation head of the Nishimura family, some 200 years ago. This was when the family were wealthy rice merchants. A researcher discovered the book in the Nishimura attic in 1934. And today it belongs to the 16th generation, Hisao Nishimura, and is a national treasure of Japan. Hisao now runs a soba noodle restaurant called Magobe. But Hisao-san is always generous and proud to bring his precious original copy of Bashō's book out to show keen Bashō researchers. Bashō's book begins, the months and days are travelers of eternity, just like the years that come and go, for those who live their lives on boats or lead horses toward old age. Their lives are travel, their journeys are home. In the vernacular, it is the pinnacle of Japanese prose. This is the first page. Let me read a few lines. Tsukihi wa hakutai no kakaku ni shite yukiko o toshi mo mata tabibito nari. Fune no ue ni shougai o ukabe, uma no kuchi toraete, oi o mukauru mono wa hibi tabi ni shite tabi o sumikatosu. The words flow so naturally, it's best to speak them out loud just to hear the melody. Haiku's 5/7/5 rhythm sits easily within the natural breathing pattern of Japanese speech, and Bashō's mastery of haiku is reflected in this melodious prose. Okay, so let's have some fun by revisiting Bashō's highlights and the prose and poetry he composed in those locations. Bashō and Sora set out on 16 May 1689 by boat from Bashō's main supporter and disciples' hermitage hut known as the Saito-an, which faced a tributary moat which flowed into the Sumida River at Fukagawa. A number of disciples rowed with Bashō and Sora about 9 kilometers down the moat and up the Sumida River, and they all alighted at the Senju Bridge, which was on the Nikko highway. Bashō's key financial supporter was Sugiyama Sampu, a wealthy fish merchant and official supplier of fish to the shogunate. Sampu had supplied Bashō with his famous Bashō-an hermitage, after which Bashō was named, and Bashō was living in Sampu's hermitage, the Saito-an, when he began his journey to the north, starting with this short boat trip, and then they walked up the 140-kilometer long Nikko highway, passing 21 post towns. Now, Bashō-related activities in Tokyo, they're all near the location of his old Bashō-an hermitage, and they include a visit to the Bashō Memorial Museum on the banks of the Sumida River. Inside, you'll see the type of clothing and travel gear which Bashō took with him, my photograph on the left there, and also a carved stone frog, which we presume may be the one that Bashō loved and was uncovered in a tsunami, and we think indicate where Bashō-an, or Bashō's hut, may have been located, which today is the location of the Bashō Inari Shrine, just around the corner from the museum. Further along, we can visit the Bashō Memorial Outlook Garden, which has a statue of Bashō which revolves, always facing the sun, has sweeping views over the Sumida River and towards Tokyo. And then back down along that little moat, the Sendai Body River, to the Saito-an Hermitage remains, and another statue of Bashō marking where he began his journey on the narrow road to the deep north. Finally, you must not miss the Fukugawa Edo Museum, a snapshot of life in Edo as Bashō would have experienced. Another Bashō statue stands outside, or sits outside, where we believe Sugiyama Sampu's hermitage was located, the Saito-an, and this is where he set off on his journey to the north, initially by boat. Today, it's a pleasant stroll along that moat. It's called the haiku path. You'll get to the Sumida River. This moat no longer flows into the river. And then you can continue the walk up along where Bashō sailed. It's about a 9-kilometer, very pleasant stroll. Also, Nikko can be visited as a day trip or on your journey further north towards Sendai. Nikko literally means city of light. It flourished as pilgrims came to pay their respects at the mausoleum of Tokugawa Ieyasu, the first Edo shogun. The Nikko Highway is the longest tree-lined avenue in the world. It's in the Guinness Book of Records. Some 20,000 trees were planted in 1625. And today, 12,500 Japanese cedars, they're actually Cryptomeria japonica, proudly stand along 35.4 kilometers of old Nikko Highway. Walking this stretch in Bashō's footsteps is a true joy. Now, allow me to introduce Sora's travel diary. My translation is the only one that I know that exists. Its value cannot be overstated. It is essential to understanding how the walk was conducted. Where Bashō's diary bends reality for literary effect, Sora's is exact. The diary now belongs to the Tendi Library near Nara, discovered by chance at a bookseller's on the Izu Peninsula in 1943. Please read this paragraph at your leisure, but we know that they arrived at Nikko on 1 April 1689, lunar calendar. That's today's 19th of May. So it took them 3 days to walk 140 kilometers up to Nikko. They arrived at noon. They made their way directly to the Toshogu shrine before finding accommodation back in Hatsuishi, which is the last post town on the Nikko highway. In Bashō's writing, he refers to Futara Shrine, the deity for which is O-Kuni Nushi. O-Kuni Nushi is a major Shinto deity of nation building, agriculture, medicine, and en-musubi, relationship or marriage bonding. And he's traditionally enshrined at Izumo Taisha as the god that ceded rulership of the earthly realm to the descendants of Amaterasu, the sun goddess, in the so-called transfer of the land, Kuni Yuzuri. This is a myth which supports the current imperial family lineage. At Nikko, O-Kuni Nushi is physically manifested in the dormant volcano Mount Nantai, overlooking beautiful Lake Chuzenji. Bashō didn't climb Mount Nantai, but would certainly have crossed the sacred bridge leading to Futara Shrine. He also mentions the rapids on the Daya River. The Daya River drains from Lake Chuzenji over the spectacular 97-meter Kegon Falls, which Bashō didn't visit but is a must-see. The rapids that Bashō mentions sit at a narrow point in the Daya River Gorge called Kammangafuchi, an abyss that Bashō praised. Today it's lined with statues of the Bodhisattva Jizo. Jizo are beings that have achieved Buddhahood, but of their own volition have chosen to stay behind to assist others to achieve Buddhahood. They assist travellers, such as ourselves, so we love them. A bit more sadly, they protect deceased children as well, who are trying to make their way to paradise, which is difficult because they haven't accumulated the weight of karma necessary to achieve that due to their short lives. Right next to the Futara shrine stands the Toshogu shrine dedicated to the first Edo shogun, Tokugawa Ieyasu, founding father of 15 generations of Tokugawa rule from 1603 to 1868. This is the shrine that Bashō and Sora headed straight to after their arrival. We know that from Sora's diary. The shrine was completed by the third shogun, Iemitsu, who was one of Ieyasu's sons, in 1634 when they moved Ieyasu's remains here. In effect, it's an attempt to replace worship of the emperor and the sun goddess, Arise, with worship of the first Tokugawa shogun himself. The Toshogu shrine is certainly one of the most extravagant in Japan. It weaves in Buddhist elements, equating Ieyasu in death with the medicine Buddha, healer of the nation's ills. Ieyasu died on 17 April 1616. Bashō was clearly moved by the Toshogu shrine's brilliance, seeing it as a fitting tribute to a ruler who brought peace and prosperity to Japan. Bashō was travelling in the Genroku era, the golden era of the Edo period, the time of the fifth Edo shogun. Bashō passes through the Shirakawa barrier, one of three barriers which protected central Yamato Japan from the indigenous Emishi tribes of the northern regions. And then the pair moved on to Sendai. Now, with some spare time in Sendai, you might like to visit the Tsutsuji-gaoka Tenmangu Shrine. On his stay in Sendai, Bashō was guided by a local painter called Kaemon, and they went on an Utamakura tour. Now, Utamakura are famous sites in ancient poetry, and this Tenjin no Miya was included. It was founded in 974, and the shrine was moved here in 1667 by the third Date domain lord. His name was Tsunamune. And so a number of these buildings Bashō would have seen. Many of them have been rebuilt after fire. The original buildings enshrined an authentic calligraphic work by Sugawara no Michizane, the deity of scholarship. A 13-minute local train ride brings us to the Tohoku History Museum. The museum is at the base of the ruins of the ancient Tagajo Fortress, another frontier defense against the northern indigenous Emishi. The museum contains an excellent permanent comprehensive exhibition of Tohoku history starting in prehistoric times. Between the museum and the ruins of Tagajo Fortress is a very pleasant stroll and an iris park which is magnificent in season when over 3 million irises of 800 varieties bloom. This is in later May and early June. The park reminds us of Bashō's poem Ayame Gusa Ashi ni Musuban Waraji no O. Sweet flag grasses, I will tie them to my sandal cord. This was a thank you poem to their guide in Sendai, Kaemon, the artist, who presented Bashō with a number of gifts, including sandals with indigo-coloured straps. And Bashō really appreciated Kaemon's acknowledgement of Sendai's traditional festival of hanging sweet flag grass, or iris, from the eaves of homes as talisman. Now, Bashō had no fixed address, and so his sandals were home, with these indigo-coloured straps as his talisman. Bashō was keen to see the Tsubo no Ishibumi, a stele which was erected in 762 to commemorate the renovation of Tagajo Fortress. The stone's authenticity was debated about 150 years ago, but recent archaeology has proven it to be original. It is now a national treasure, still standing out on the hillside where Bashō saw it. There is a copy in the museum. Of note here is Bashō's chapter on the stele, which starts, "Following a map provided by Kaemon, we took the narrow road to the north, alongside a mountain, and were able to see the sedge field used to make the well-known 10-stranded mats." Now, this passage gives Bashō the title for his book. The 10-stranded mats apparently were very famous, very long sedge, and they were gifted to the court in Nara. And this sedge still grows in the pond in the garden of the museum, so look out for it. Bashō next heads for his beloved Matsushima, famous for its beauty since at least the 10th century. Matsushima was long a subject of poetry and painting and a centre of worship. Temples and stone stupas called itabi were erected there. Local farmers, suffering under heavy taxes and frequent famine, sought salvation through elaborate offerings to Shinto and Buddhist deities. And those itabi still stand today as reminders of that hardship. Matsushima Bay brims with 260 pine-clad islands, a few more at low tide. This is where cold and warm ocean currents meet. The resulting rich fishing grounds support the busy port town of Shiogama nearby. Matsushima is counted among Japan's 3 most celebrated views, a list attributed to the early Edo period scholar Hayashi Gaho. The islands themselves are made of tough, compressed volcanic ash formed 3 million years ago. The hilltops became islands around 20,000 years ago as sea levels rose at the end of the last glacial maximum. From Sora's diary, we know they departed Shiogama port by boat, sailing past a string of utamakura, those places already famous in ancient poetry. They left mid-morning from Chigano-ura Bay, the port of Shiogama today, and they arrive into Matsushima at noon. And today we can take a Bashō cruise from Shiogama to Matsushima following Sora's exact directions in his diary. I just love this. First, past Magaki Island, now part of the bustling Shiogama fishing port. It's protected within the harbour's breakwaters. Then past little Miyako Island, a long, narrow island with a small shrine. And others, including Oshima Island. Now, Oshima is mentioned in Bashō's own writing. It's an important island dotted with itabi, steles, and caves carved into the tuff, which were once retreats for meditating priests, a true sacred island of devotion. About 50 of those caves survive today, containing stupas, Buddhas, 5 ring towers representing the 5 elements, and carved death names, posthumous names. My favourite island, perhaps one of Sora's unnamed others, is Fukura Island, today reached by a graceful 252-metre bridge. The island functions as a natural botanical garden and has a prominent position in the bay. Home to over 300 native plant species, it's a place to wander wooded trails past labelled plants amid Matsushima's pine-covered scenery. Bashō writes of Matsushima, although one might be tired of hearing it, Matsushima is the most beautiful place in Japan. There are countless islands in the bay. The islands that rise high into the sky point toward the heavens. The low ones seem to crawl on their bellies through the waves. Others appear to be piled on top of each other, 2 or 3 layers deep. Just when one thinks this island seems to be separate at the left, it appears joined to another at the right. Some appear to be carrying a small island on their backs, and others to be holding an island in their arms, as if they were lovingly caring for a child or grandchild. The green of the pine trees is crisp, their branches twisted against the sea breeze. Although shaped by the forces of nature, they appear to have been pruned to this state of perfection by human hand. The scene has a deep, quiet beauty, like that of an elegant woman. Now, this poem is by Sora. Bashō is lost for words. This beauty, he fails to write a poem. And Sora's poem is Matsushima ya tsuru ni mio kare hototogisu. Spectacular Matsushima, borrowing the form of a white crane, the little cuckoo flew over. Sora penned this verse, but I failed to write a poem to match the quality of the scene. So Sora's poem is lovely, about the little dusty cuckoo, which is normally known for its beautiful song, but it's embarrassed to fly over this beautiful scene, so he borrows the beautiful cape of a white crane to fly over. The islands really are as Bashō describes. This is Kanejima, the Bell Island, where waves lap into 4 bell chamber-like caves. Ise Island sits low, quietly sophisticated. I photographed this in the beautiful afternoon light. Senganjima Island, made famous by the feudal lord Date Masamune in the 17th century. He was so struck by its shape and beauty that he vowed a fortune to anyone who could move it to his residence. Luckily, they didn't. On the Matsushima shore, a magnificent Ensuin temple was a private mausoleum. It was not open to Bashō, so he didn't see it. It is open to the public today. It was is the mausoleum of Date Masamune's young grandson. Now, Masamune was instrumental in Ieyasu's final unification of Japan. However, the Tokugawa never fully trusted him, and his grandson, Mitsumune, was handsome and formidably talented and was seen as too great a threat, and was assassinated in Edo at the young age of 18. And the mausoleum is an expression of intense grief for the Date family's tragic loss. Inside, the young Masamune rides his steed. The mausoleum's decorations reveal the Date family's international interests. In 1613, the Date family sent a diplomatic mission to the Vatican via Mexico and Spain, an act that only deepened Tokugawa suspicion. The mission met the Pope, Paul V, and then departed from Seville in Spain in 1616. However, a number of members chose to stay behind in Spain, settling in nearby Coria del Rio, near Seville. And today, roughly 650 of Coria's 24,000 residents still carry the surname Japan, Hapon. It's amazing. Among the mausoleum's decorations, we find daffodils representing Florence, roses which represent Rome, but the first rose bushes were brought back to Japan by this mission. And even diamonds, clubs, hearts, and spades, of course, motifs from European playing cards. Ensuin's Zen garden echoes the pine-clad islands of Matsushima Bay, and in autumn, the garden's night illumination is not to be missed. Next door stands the magnificent Zuiganji Temple, which Bashō did visit. The approach was lined with cedars from about 150 years ago, but they were all felled after the 2011 tsunami reached almost to the temple middle gate. The wave hit 70 centimeters deep at the front gate, which you see in both photographs there. So the salt water weakened the trees. One tree did survive closer to the temple's middle gate. It's the 400-year cedar planted in Date Masamune's time. Bashō was very interested by the caves which still line the approach. They were used as crematoria. Now, the 2011 earthquake caused the ground here to subside by 60 centimeters, though elsewhere in Matsushima it sank by as much as 2 meters. Zuiganji's main hall happened to be under renovation when the March 2011 earthquake struck. Thankfully, its heavy roof was removed, which saved it. I spoke to the head priest the following week, and he reported just one small crack in a floorboard. Had the roof still been on the building, everyone inside, including the building, would have been destroyed. Renovation finished 5 years later in 2016, and the temple's golden screens, which Bashō so admired, shine again today for us to enjoy. These are careful copies, but they are in the state with which Bashō would have enjoyed. The originals, which Bashō would have seen, are stored away carefully. There's always one out on rotation, on permanent display in the temple's treasure museum next door. Zuiganji was founded in 828. Its present timbers were shipped from Kumano in the Kii Peninsula, very good quality timbers, and the noted architect Umemura Hikosaemon led over 300 carpenters through 5 years of work, completing it in 1609. It remains the Date family's temple. In earlier centuries, Matsushima was known as the Koya-san of Tohoku, hallowed ground, where people prayed for safe passage to the Pure Land. Yet for me, these golden rooms also represent a real human cost. The gold that adorns them and the Buddhist statues cast to atone for the sins of the ruling class were extracted at great cost to the Tohoku's ordinary subjugated people. The main worship hall is built like a warrior's palace, echoing techniques used at Nijo Castle in Kyoto, complete with an anti-intrusion warning system, known as the Nightingale floors, and 17-centimetre thick Zelkova floorboards, the hardest timber in Japan, so protecting the occupants from attack from below. It has 3 entrances, the main left-hand one for the emperor, again well above status of a feudal domain, the centre for daimyo, and the right for samurai retainers. Next door stands an impressive kitchen, the kuri, a fine example of Masamune's warrior aesthetic, topped with a small roofed chimney that seems very likely to have doubled as a lookout post. Bashō next visits Mount Hiyori, overlooking the busy fishing port of Ishinomaki. This is my photo from 1982. I include it here to reflect on the challenges the area has faced since the 2011 earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster. This is my photo of the town immediately after the 2011 earthquake. Ishinomaki was the hardest hit municipality of the entire disaster, more deaths than anywhere else. Some 3,500 people lost their lives here, roughly 1/6 of the population of the town, and 57,000 of the city's 74,000 homes were destroyed. One of the most widely reported tragedies occurred at Okawa Elementary School, where 74 of 108 students and 10 of 13 teachers died after a delayed evacuation left them exposed to the tsunami. Bashō and Sora looked out over Ishinomaki. It's here that a spy theory perhaps arose, the idea that Bashō was surveying this strategically important Date-controlled port for the Tokugawa shogunate. From here, Bashō and Sora take 2 days to walk roughly due north, almost 70 kilometers up to Hiraizumi. Today, a local train journey takes less than 2 hours to arrive at Hiraizumi from Matsushima. Hiraizumi was the northern Fujiwara's 4-generation attempt to build a pure land or paradise on earth. By Bashō and Sora's visit, it lay in ruins. Bashō and Sora first visit Yoshitsune's memorial on Takadachi Hill. They arrived on the 500th anniversary of Yoshitsune's death, for which the Gikeido Hall had been built 6 years earlier. Minamoto no Yoshitsune was the brilliant, tragic young general whose victories had helped his half-brother, Yoritomo, crush the Taira, and this starts the Kamakura period, only for Yoritomo to turn on him afterward. Yoshitsune fled the length of Japan north to Hiraizumi and was protected for a time under northern Fujiwara patronage. But after his protector, the 3rd generation Hidehira, died, his son Yasuhira betrayed him. This story of Yoshitsune and his warrior monk retainer Benkei runs deep through Japanese theatre and literature. The underdog sympathy it inspires is known as Hoganbiiki in Japanese, takes its name from Yoshitsune's title. Foundational literature and theatre include the tale of Heike, and Noh plays like Hashi Benkei, and kabuki classics, above all Kanjincho and Yoshitsune Senbon Zakura, which is one of the 3 great kabuki masterpieces. The 2nd generation lord, Motohira, principally built Motsuji Temple. This is an image of what it would have looked like. It was once a grand complex of temple structures, none of which survive today, nor when Bashō visited. But recent archaeology has restored its important Heian period garden, one of the few still surviving in Japan. Motohira built it with Kyoto in mind and a real ambition to surpass Kyoto's own temples. It was modelled on Kyoto's Hoshoji temple, yet it's unmistakably northern, its pond evoking Japan's northern rugged coastline. There's a real sense here that the north is trying to shake off its inferiority complex toward the capital of Kyoto. In the garden stands a monument to Bashō's poem, composed in the grassy plains, the ruins of Hiraizumi. It reads, Natsu kusaya tsuwamono dono ga yume no ato. The summer grasses, for many brave warriors, the aftermath of dreams. This translation is by Donald Keene, the celebrated university Japanese literature translator. The walk continues up to the magnificent Chusonji Temple and the Golden Hall, built under the first generation lord, Kiyohira. Bashō describes the joy of finally seeing Chusonji's Golden Hall. He writes, the two halls we had heard about for so long, the prayer hall and the Golden Hall, were open. The prayer hall contains the statues of 3 generations of northern Fujiwara leaders. His poem, Samidare no furinokoshite ya hikari-do, the rains of early summer have left untouched the Golden Hall. He reflects on the protective building placed there in the Kamakura period, which protected the Golden Hall. He actually gets some of the facts wrong, though. The prayer hall was closed, and the statues of the leaders are actually inside the Golden Hall. We know this detail from Sora's diary. Bashō was erring on the side of poetry. So Chusonji's Konjiki-do, or Golden Hall, was built around 900 years ago in 1124 by Fujiwara Kiyohira. The square structure measures about 5.5 meters on each side, tiled with a wooden roof. But its defining feature is the gold leaf, covering everything, walls, floor, right to the eaves. Inside, Amida, the Buddha of infinite light, sits flanked by the bodhisattvas Kannon and Seishi. Kannon is the goddess of mercy, and Seishi is the god of great power, typical attendants of the Amida Buddha. An unusual arrangement of 6 Jizo images, we know the Jizo, guarded by the 2 kings, Jikoku-ten and Zocho-ten, encircles the central trinity. The 2 kings are from the 4 Shitenno guardians of the cardinal directions, and they're protectors of the Buddhist Dharma, or teachings. Look for the 4 round pillars painted with 48 bodhisattvas and gilded peacocks in high relief around the altar's base. The inner sanctum evokes the Buddhist paradise itself, decorated with the finest techniques of the day, gold and silver makie lacquerwork, and inlaid mother of pearl from imported great turban shells. As Pure Land Buddhism grew in influence at the end of the Heian period, the 10th century, many Amida halls were built across Japan, but nowhere else combined gold leaf and lacquer architecture quite like this, a measure of Kiyohira's devotion to his Pure Land vision. The hall is also the resting place of 4 generations of the Fujiwara family. A protective outer structure built during the Kamakura period let the hall survive centuries of wind and snow until a 6-year restoration beginning in 1962 replaced that structure with the current fireproof one. The Golden Hall represents the pinnacle of Heian art and aesthetics and was the first structure in Japan ever designated a national treasure. Bashō and Sora next head for Naruko Hot Springs, another enjoyable local train trip through the Japanese countryside today. Naruko is famous for kokeshi dolls, simple wooden figures hand-carved and painted for over 180 years, originally as souvenirs for hot spring visitors, so Bashō would never have seen them. Naruko kokeshi are known for their distinctive squeak when you turn the head. Also their warm reddish-brown colouring and delicate chrysanthemum patterns. Of 11 regional kokeshi types, Narukos are the most recognisable, made from a creamy dogwood that deepens to a chestnut colour with age. With these slender eyes, small U-shaped noses, scarlet lips, and straight, gently tapered bodies decorated in red and green chrysanthemums. Spend some time, it's really mesmerising to watch the artisans carve and paint them. Every year on the Friday evening before the National Kokeshi Festival in September, damaged old dolls sent from across Japan are ceremonially burnt in a sacred fire at the Onsen Jinja, the Onsen hot spring shrine. This is called the rite of Kokeshi Kuyo, releasing their spirits with gratitude. My favourite time here is in November when the fall leaves are at their peak. Leaving Naruko, Bashō and Sora were stopped at a checkpoint that the Date clan had built some 19 years earlier. Lacking the right papers, it took a while to convince the suspicious guards to let them through. This day's walk is one of the most pleasant of the whole journey. Along the way, we make some noise to scare away the Japanese black bears. In the fall, we pass daikon radishes drying in the sun, being prepared for winter soups through the cold months ahead. The day ends at the Hojin no Ie, the border guard house, owned by the Ariji family when Bashō visited. Bashō wrote, as we struggled up a long mountain path, darkness had already begun to fall. We happened upon a border guard house and asked shelter for the night. However, furious rains and winds kept us there 3 whole days in that lonely mountain place. This guardhouse is the only extant building within which Bashō actually stayed. Its caretaker still lights a fire daily just where Bashō sat. The smoke keeps the thatch dry and insect-free. It's today a small museum describing the life of the Ariji family. They were border guards, they raised horses, and they were merchants. The display includes a natagiri hat, a farmer's snow hat, the shape of which lends its name to the mountain pass that we'll cross tomorrow. In winter, the horses lived inside, their food cooked and served warm, which aided digestion. Bashō's poem is Nomi shirami uma no shito suru makuramoto. Fleas and lice, a horse pisses next to my pillow. So even a night troubled by fleas and lice in a land where valuable horses lived side by side with people takes on its own strange refinement. So rather than being a complaint, Bashō is indirectly admiring the lifestyle of his hosts, the Ariji family. That evening, it's very enjoyable to stay at Akakura Onsen, although Bashō and Sora bravely walk straight past and up and over the next challenge, the Natagiri mountain pass. We'll face that challenge after enjoying the hot spring waters at Akakura Onsen. Meals are prepared with care and include local Wagyu beef, and a local hearty soba or buckwheat dumpling soup. But just before dinner is served, two delightful locals have taken to dressing up as Bashō and Sora, and they act out Bashō and Sora trying to sleep among fleas and lice, but are of course kept awake by the sound of horses. Breakfast at our inn includes Nara Chazen, the meal that Bashō and Sora were offered at their next stop in Obanazawa. Nara Chazen was a meal popular among Edo poets. The dish originated in Nara, comprising rice cooked with leftover green tea, with chestnuts mixed in, also sweetened red azuki beans. You can see there I've eaten half of them already, sorry. Simmered mountain vegetables, and bitter narazuke, pickled white gourd, pickled a number of times over up to a year in fresh batches of the lees of sake kasu. The following day takes us up and over the Natagiri Pass, named for the farmers' snow hats, the shape of the hats. From the pass we glimpse Mount Gassan of the three sacred mountains of Dewa. Like the Natagiri farmer's hat, the climb is steep up on one side, followed by a gentle, enjoyable descent on the other side. Bashō makes a short detour to Yamadera temple. The visit to Rishakuji temple, affectionately known colloquially as Yamadera, the mountain temple, feels the same today as it would have for Bashō and Sora. Bashō's haiku here is Shizukasa ya iwa ni shimiiru semi no koe. Quietness, sinking into the rocks, a cicada's cry. Now, Bashō saw loneliness as closely related to quietness, not about being alone or needing company, but a particular atmosphere that doesn't require another human presence at all. My translation is tranquility, and yet the cicada's voice is loud enough to penetrate the rock. Bashō cleverly uses the vowel sound I throughout his poem to mimic the cicada's piercing cry. So, Shizukasa ya iwa ni shimi iru semi no koe. So, very, very clever. Next, the pair travel down the Mogami River swollen with summer rains, on a safflower barge, and then onto the Dewa Sanzan Mountains, where they stay for 9 nights. His poem there was Arigata ya yuki o kaorasu minami dani. How grateful I am to breathe the fresh air scented with snow at Minami Dani. So this was a thank you poem to his temple hosts. I was always curious about why snow featured in a poem from the height of summer until I visited and realized snow lingering on Mount Gassan year-round. Of the 3 sacred Dewa mountains, the only peak which can be accessed year-round is Mount Haguro, where 2,446 steps climb through stunning 600-year-old cedars up to the main shrine. Bashō and Sora made that climb on 19 July 1689. The staircase was laid down in 1648 about 40 years before they visited. But it's still in very good form. They passed this striking pagoda near the base of the mountain. Legend credits the pagoda to the warlord Taira no Masakado in the 930s, about 1100 years ago. Though this structure, standing today, is actually a 1372 reconstruction after fire destroyed the original. It is Tohoku area's only National Treasure Pagoda. Masakado represents one of the earliest and most famous symbols of samurai defiance against the emperor. At the summit stands the Haguro Shrine. This is the largest thatched roof structure in Japan. And the complex includes a pilgrim's lodge called the Saikan. And today the Saikan is celebrated for its vegetarian meals of foraged mountain vegetables. The signature dishes include goma dofu, sesame tofu, the local specialty, which is handmade from ground sesame paste, and kuzu starch, made into a thick, rich, gooey texture, served with a savoury, sweet sauce. Sansai, or foraged mountain vegetables, include in season nemagari dake, which is the young shoots of sasa, the bamboo grass, and other mountain vegetables in season, including warabi, common bracken, and zenmai, which is a fern. The young bracken, warabi, contains a carcinogenic compound, so it must be leached out in cold running water for 24 hours. So you often see the taps running up in the shrine. In season, you'll find oitadori, giant knotweed, or fuki, bog rhubarb, or momijigusa, which is a member of the chrysanthemum family, served. But the meal's foundation, of course, is rice, miso soup, and pickled vegetables. Here we see pickled baby eggplants. Bashō and Sora spent 2 of their 9 days at Dewa climbing the other 2 sacred peaks, Gassan and Yudono, overnighting in a mountain hut on Gassan. Gassan continues to be a center of Shugendo ascetic training, and Bashō climbed in the spirit of a Yamabushi, the lay mountain ascetic. Shugendo is a syncretic tradition blending esoteric Buddhism, ancient Shinto, northern shamanism, and Taoism. Its practitioners, the Yamabushi, undergo austere training, which includes cold water purification, fasting, sutra chanting, fire rituals. There's an asphyxiation phase, long treks along quite dangerous, steep forest trails, all aimed at spiritual death and rebirth through communion with the mountain deities. The Dewa Sanzan pilgrimage as a whole is often read symbolically as a journey through past, present, and future lives. Haguro is the present, Gassan the past and death, and Yudono the future and rebirth, with those who complete the circuit being said to be spiritually reborn. I undertake this training each year, and one of my Yamabushi colleagues, Mr. Shida, owns the high-class Tsutaya Inn in the footsteps of Mount Yudono, which I can highly recommend as a place to stay nearby. Bashō and Sora went as far north as Kisakata, and then they made their way along the Sea of Japan coastline down to Kanazawa, which is very refined. and then on to Yamanaka Hot Springs. Sora had accompanied his master tirelessly for 114 days from Edo to these hot springs, where they rested for 8 days, recovering in the strong, recuperative hot spring waters. However, they parted at Yamanaka, and Sora walked on alone, still arranging for everything Bashō will continue to need, through to Ogaki, where the journey ends. There's lots of theories, but it's said that Sora may have been affected by a stomach complaint. Bashō wrote emotionally about their parting, but the great loss to centuries of Bashō researchers is the loss of the meticulously kept diary that we don't have about Bashō's movements from Yamanaka through to Ogaki. Bashō will spend the next 5 years editing his manuscript into a masterpiece. Some of that editing is conducted in a hut near Kyoto in front of Kisono Yoshinaka's grave, and Bashō will request to be buried here, and indeed his grave sits here. On the right, Donald Keene uses this 1955 photo of Bashō's grave on the cover of his biography, Chronicles of My Life, and out of respect for my old professor, I'm holding his biography in my hand as I pose in front of Bashō's grave. Thank you so much for listening in.